The trap closes. The cold black of space was quiet, but not empty. 1,000 alien warships hung in the void, their sharp hulls reflecting the dim light of a dying star. They formed a wide circle, slowly tightening around a single human vessel. That floated in the center. The human ship looked small compared to the massive alien cruisers. Its armor was scratched, its engines running at low power, and to anyone watching, it seemed like a ship with no way out. On the alien flagship, Admiral Korath stood on the command deck, his 4 eyes fixed on the human vessel. "This will be over soon," he said, his voice cold and sure. He had fought humans before and found them clever but fragile. Now, with overwhelming numbers and firepower, he believed victory was certain. "Prepare the surrender broadcast," Korath ordered. "We will give them one chance before we erase them." Inside the human ship, the HSS Valiant, Captain Elias Ward leaned over the tactical display. Lines of red dots surrounded a single blue dot. His ship. The crew around him spoke in low voices, fear heavy in the air. Lieutenant Harris whispered, "Sir, we can't fight them. We're trapped." Ward didn't answer right away, his eyes scanning the map like a man reading an old story he already knew the ending to. Finally, he spoke, his tone calm and steady. "We're not trapped, Lieutenant. They are." The crew exchanged confused looks. To them, the numbers told one story, death, but Ward's words hinted at another. Something they didn't yet understand. Deep inside the Valiant, far below the crew decks, was a locked chamber guarded by 2 armed Marines. The door was reinforced with layers of metal, and strange warning symbols were etched into its surface. Even the guards didn't know what was inside. All they knew was that the captain had given strict orders. No one entered without his command. And today, that order might be about to change. The alien broadcast came through, the voice of Admiral Korath echoing across the ship's speakers. "Human vessel, you are surrounded by the forces of the Korathian Empire," it said. "You have no escape and no chance of victory. Surrender now, and we will grant you a swift and merciful end." The crew froze, waiting for Ward's reply. He pressed the come button, his voice smooth, almost casual. "Tell your admiral we accept his terms, but only if he comes to speak in person." A murmur swept through the alien command deck when the message reached them. Korath's second-in-command frowned. "Admiral, it could be a trap." Korath's lip curled. Trap? In their position? They have no weapons that can threaten us, and their engines are barely alive. I will end this myself." Back on the Valiant, the crew looked at their captain in disbelief. "Sir," Harris said quietly, "what are you doing?" "Bringing him here could—" Ward cut him off. "Trust me, Lieutenant, this is exactly what we need." His eyes shifted to the sealed chamber on the lower decks, and for a brief second, something in his gaze hinted at a plan far bigger than the crew could imagine. Minutes later, the alien shuttle detached from the flagship and began its slow approach toward the Valiant. Alien fighters moved to escort it, their weapons armed but not firing. Inside the shuttle, Admiral Korath sat with his guards, confident that this was nothing more than a symbolic victory lap. He was already thinking about the speech he would make to his people after crushing yet another human resistance ship. On the human ship, the Marines outside the sealed chamber received a short, coded message from the captain. They glanced at each other, their hands tightening on their rifles. The message was simple, only 3 words: "Begin activation sequence." The older of the 2 Marines keyed in a series of commands on a small console beside the door. Deep inside the chamber, something ancient stirred, its surface faintly glowing as if waking from a long sleep. The alien shuttle docked with a metallic thud. The airlock hissed open, and Admiral Korath stepped onto the human deck. He looked around with disdain, as though walking through the ruins of a defeated world. Captain Ward met him at the docking bay, his posture relaxed, his hands clasped loosely behind his back. "Welcome aboard the Valiant," Ward said calmly. Korath sneered. Your arrogance is impressive, human, but it ends today. Ward gestured for him to follow toward the negotiation room. Every step they took brought them closer to the sealed chamber below. In the walls, faint vibrations began to travel, unnoticed. By most, except Korath, who paused, his brow furrowing. What is that? He demanded. Ward only smiled slightly. You'll see soon enough. By the time they reached the negotiation room, the hum beneath their feet was louder, like the slow heartbeat of something massive. Korath's guards shifted nervously, their hands tightening on their weapons. Somewhere deep in the ship, the artifact's glow brightened, and an unseen energy began to seep into the surrounding space. Outside, alien ship sensors flickered, small warnings appearing on their consoles. The Korathian fleet's comms began to distort, static creeping in. No one yet realized that the trap had already been sprung, and Captain Ward, standing face to face with the most feared admiral in the Empire, leaned in just slightly and said, Admiral, welcome to the center of your defeat. Asterisk, terms of surrender. The negotiation room on the HSS Valiant was small compared to the alien flagship's grand halls. The walls were lined with old human flags and medals, symbols of battles long past. Admiral Korath sat across from Captain Ward, his armored claws tapping against the metal table. His two guards stood behind him, their eyes scanning every corner of the room. Ward's own officers stood silently by the door, tense but disciplined. I am here to accept your surrender, Korath began, his voice deep and commanding. You will hand over your ship, your crew, and any military intelligence you hold. In exchange, I will ensure your deaths are swift. The words carried no emotion, just cold certainty. Ward leaned back in his chair, his expression calm, almost bored. You will have your answer, Ward said softly. But first, I'd like to discuss the conditions. Korath's eyes narrowed. Conditions? You are surrounded by a fleet 1,000 times stronger than your single ship. He leaned forward, his voice low. You are in no position to bargain. Ward smiled faintly. That's what makes this interesting. For a brief moment, their eyes locked, predator against predator, each searching for the other's weakness. Far below their feet, the sealed chamber vibrated as energy pulsed through the ancient artifact inside. Its surface shimmered with strange patterns. As though it was listening to the conversation above, the Marines guarding it exchanged uneasy glances. The older Marine checked a monitor, showing the artifact's power levels. The readings were climbing faster than expected. This thing's waking up too fast, he muttered. Captain knows what he's doing, the younger Marine replied, though his voice shook slightly. Korath noticed the faint hum under the floor. His head tilted slightly. Your ship is trembling, human. What is it? Ward met his gaze evenly. Just the sound of history catching up to you. The alien guards shifted uneasily, their instincts whispering that something was wrong. But Korath waved them to silence, refusing to show fear. You humans have a habit of delaying the inevitable, Korath said. In the last war, you fought with desperate bravery. But in the end, you always fell. Your cities burned, your fleets shattered. Ward listened without flinching, then said quietly, and yet, here I am, facing you, not the other way around. Korath's claws twitched against the table, the sound sharp in the silent room. Ward pressed a small button on the table. A holographic map of the surrounding space appeared, showing the alien fleet in a tight circle around the Valiant. You see this? Ward said, pointing at the glowing ring of red ships. You think it's a sign of my weakness, but in truth, it's the perfect position for me. Korath scoffed. Perfect? You are trapped. Exactly, Ward replied, his tone oddly satisfied. And so are you. At that moment, the lights flickered for the first time. It was subtle, but enough to make Korath glance toward the ceiling. In the sealed chamber, the artifact's glow burst brighter, sending waves of invisible energy through the ship and beyond. On the alien flagship, officers began shouting as their comms filled with static. Weapon systems flashed red error messages, and engines began to lose power across the fleet. Panic rippled as ship after ship reported sudden failures. Korath's wrist communicator crackled, then went dead. He looked at Ward sharply. "What have you done?" Ward folded his hands, his calm never breaking. "I told you, Admiral." Conditions. Korath's guards reached for their weapons, but before they could move, the human officers raised theirs in perfect unison. The air in the room became thick with tension, the balance of power shifting in an instant. Ward stood slowly, walking toward the large window that showed the alien fleet outside. Massive warships drifted, powerless, their running lights flickering weakly. "They're not gone," Ward said. "Just unable to touch us." Korath's voice was low. "That's impossible." Ward glanced back over his shoulder. "And yet, here we are." He stepped closer to Korath, lowering his voice so only the Admiral could hear. "This ship carries something older than both our civilizations combined," Ward said. "It was buried deep in the ruins of a dead world, long before your empire rose, long before humanity left Earth." Korath stared at him, silent but tense. "It only activates," Ward continued, "when there is no other choice." The Admiral's expression hardened, but for the first time, a shadow of uncertainty flickered in his eyes. The hum from below grew louder, almost like a heartbeat. Ward leaned down slightly, his voice cold now. "So here's my first condition, Admiral. No one in your fleet moves. No one fires, no one runs, until I say so." Korath's guards shifted uncomfortably, but the alien leader lifted a hand, stopping them. Somewhere deep inside, he knew he had just walked into a trap, far bigger than any human trick he had expected. Outside, the fleet of the Korathian Empire hung silent in space. Inside the Valiant, the artifact pulsed again, sending another wave through the void. Korath's eyes narrowed. "And your second condition?" Ward smiled faintly. "That one, Admiral, you'll discover soon enough." The part ended as a faint alarm sounded on both human and alien ships. A new signal appeared on the edge of the holographic map, one neither side recognized, and deep. In the sealed chamber, the artifact seemed to glow in answer, as if it had been waiting for this moment all along. The awakening hum inside the HSS Valiant was no longer faint. It rolled through the ship like a slow, steady drumbeat. Each pulse stronger than the last. Crew members glanced at each other nervously, their hands brushing against walls that now seemed to vibrate with life. In the sealed chamber deep below, the artifact glowed brighter, bathing the small room in shifting patterns of silver and blue light. It was no longer dormant, it was waking. The two Marines standing guard shifted uneasily, the older one, Sergeant. Vance kept his rifle ready, but his eyes fixed on the strange shapes moving across the artifact's surface. The younger Marine, Private Keller, swallowed hard. "Sir, are we sure this thing is safe?" Vance didn't answer immediately. His gaze locked on the glow. Finally, he said, "Safe?" "No, not even close." On the command deck, Captain Ward stood beside the alien Admiral. The holographic map still floated above the table, showing the massive Korathian fleet dead in space. But now, a new signal blinked at the edge of the map, sleek and sharp, moving faster than anything the sensors had ever tracked. Korath stared at it, his brow furrowing. "That is no ship of mine." Ward's eyes were on the signal too, but his expression carried something different. Not fear, but recognition. "You know what that is, don't you?" Korath asked, his voice low. Ward didn't turn. "I've read about them. In the same ruins where we found the artifact." Korath's gaze snapped to him. "Ruins? That thing you're hiding. It came from them?" Ward finally looked at the alien Admiral. "It didn't just come from them, Admiral. It built them." The words hung in the air, heavy and sharp. Korath's guards shifted uneasily, their instincts screaming that something far bigger than a surrender negotiation was happening here. From the lower decks, the artifact released. A slow wave of energy that rolled outward like ripples in a pond. It passed harmlessly through the Valiant's hull. But when it reached the alien fleet, more systems went dark. On their bridges, alien officers shouted in panic as even life support began to falter. Private Keller's voice came over the intercom, shaky and tense. "Captain, the artifact's power levels are climbing past safe limits." Ward pressed a button on the console. "Maintain guard, Sergeant. No one enters without my order." In the chamber, Vance stared as the artifact's smooth surface shifted, forming a single deep groove across its center. Light poured from it, swirling like liquid metal. "It's opening," Keller whispered. On the map, the mysterious new signal split into 3 smaller ones, each moving with impossible speed. Korath's voice was tight. "Those are warships, but not like any I've seen. No heat signature, no standard drive trail." Ward nodded slowly. "Because they're not from this galaxy." That made the alien admiral freeze, his 4 eyes locking on Ward. "What are you saying, human?" "I'm saying," Ward replied, "that we're both standing in the way of something that doesn't care if you're Korathian or human." Another pulse surged from the artifact, this one so strong the deck under their feet shook. Korath's. Guards reached for the wall to steady themselves. Ward kept his balance, his voice calm but firm. "This is what I wanted you here for, Admiral, to see that you're not the top predator anymore." The sealed chamber filled with a low, strange sound, not mechanical, not natural, but something in between. Vance and Keller backed up toward the door as the groove in the artifact widened. A blinding light spilled out, and for a second they could see shadows moving inside the glow. The Marines couldn't tell if they were shapes or eyes watching them. Ward's cum crackled again. "Sir, it's awake," Vance said, his voice almost a whisper. Korath heard the words and turned sharply to Ward. "What have you unleashed?" Ward's expression stayed unreadable. "The only thing that can level the field. Outside, the alien." Fleet floated helpless. The new enemy ships slowed as they reached the perimeter, almost as if testing the waters. Then, without warning, one of them vanished, only to reappear behind the farthest alien cruiser. A blinding flash followed, and the cruiser split apart silently, drifting into 2 massive chunks. Korath's jaw tightened, his voice low and grim. Those are hunters." Ward glanced at him. "Then I suppose we're the prey." But even as he said it, the artifact's light flared, and every screen on the Valiant flickered with strange symbols no one could read. The hum turned into a steady, deep pulse that matched the rhythm of a heartbeat. And in the center of the sealed chamber, the artifact's surface cracked open, revealing a core of shifting, swirling energy that seemed alive. The Marines stared in awe and fear. Keller whispered, "It's looking at us." Vance didn't answer, because he felt it too. A presence, ancient and aware. On the command deck, Ward's gaze shifted to the Admiral. "Admiral Korath," he said slowly, "you came here expecting to witness a human surrender." Korath didn't reply, his eyes fixed on the holographic map where the enemy ships now surrounded them both. Ward leaned closer, his voice a razor. "Instead, you're about to witness the awakening of something that will decide both our fates." Outside, space itself seemed to twist as the artifact released one final blinding pulse. Every alien and human system shut down for a split second. When they came back online, the enemy ships had stopped moving, as if they too were watching. And deep within the Valiant, the artifact whispered in a voice only Ward could hear. Asterisk, turning the tide. The command deck of the HSS Valiant was silent. Every officer, every soldier, every alien guard felt the same thing. The sense that something ancient now had its attention fixed on them. The holographic map showed 3 enemy ships circling slowly, like predators deciding when to strike. The Carathian fleet still floated powerless, their massive hulls casting shadows. Over the small human vessel, and deep in the sealed chamber, the artifact's light pulsed with steady, deliberate rhythm. Captain Ward stood at the center of it all, calm but sharp-eyed. Admiral Korath's claws tapped against the table, a faint metallic click betraying his tension. "What does it want?" Korath asked quietly. Ward didn't look at him. "It wants to decide." Korath's voice hardened. "Decide what?" Ward finally turned, meeting his gaze. "Whether we live or whether we burn." Below deck, Sergeant Vance and Private Keller stood guard as the artifact's glow deepened into a golden hue. The strange groove along its center was now fully open, revealing a swirling core of light and shadow. It felt alive, like a massive eye staring out from another world. Without warning, the artifact's voice, not sound, but thought, touched their minds. "2 paths," it whispered. "Fight together or die apart." On the command deck, a low tone echoed from the Kun station. Lieutenant Harris checked the panel, her voice uneasy. "Sir, the artifact is sending a transmission, but not through our systems." Ward stepped closer. "Then through what?" She shook her head slowly. "Through everything outside." Every Carathian and human ship received the same message, an image of the 3 enemy vessels, followed by 2 symbols. One glowed gold, the other burned red. Ward didn't need translation. "It's giving us a choice." Korath's eyes narrowed. "A choice? We are disabled. Our ships are nothing but targets." Ward's tone was cold. "Not if we work together." Korath's guards bristled at the idea, but the alien admiral raised a hand to silence them. His voice was low but firm. "If I agree, and we survive, it will be because I allowed a human to lead in battle. My people will not forget that." Ward's eyes didn't soften. "If you don't agree, Admiral, your people won't be alive to remember anything." Far above the sealed chamber, the artifact pulsed brighter. A wave of energy rolled outward, touching every ship in the area. Human and Carathian consoles flickered back to life, though only partially. Engines powered at minimal thrust. Weapon systems ran at reduced output. Ward turned to Korath. "It's giving us just enough to fight, but only if we fight smart." On the alien flagship, Korath's second-in-command sent a hesitant transmission. "Admiral, our engines respond?" "Barely. Weapons at 20%. Korath glanced at Ward. "If this fails, human, I will personally see to your death." Ward smirked faintly. "Get in line." The first enemy ship moved, a blur of dark metal cutting through space. It appeared behind a Carathian destroyer and fired a beam of pure white energy, slicing through armor like paper. Ward barked orders. "Valiant, target its flanks, Admiral. Swing your nearest cruisers to box it in." For the first time, human and alien ships moved in unison. It wasn't graceful. The alien formations were rigid and precise. The human maneuvers fluid and unpredictable. But it worked. The enemy ship, surprised by the sudden coordination, swerved hard to escape. In the sealed chamber, the artifact pulsed faster. It fed power into the Valiant's main cannon, overcharging it. On the bridge, Harris called out, "Sir, the main gun is ready. Overcapacity by 70%. Ward didn't hesitate. Fire. The beam tore through the void, hitting the enemy ship mid-turn. The vessel twisted violently, its dark hull cracking as streams of strange light bled into space. It broke apart silently, fragments spinning, away until they dissolved into nothing. Korath's eyes widened slightly. "You destroyed it?" Ward shook his head. "No. It let us destroy it." The remaining 2 enemy ships shifted formation, now focusing entirely on the Valiant. Their movements were faster, sharper. "They've learned from that." Ward muttered. Korath stepped forward, his voice clipped. "Then we adapt again. The second attack came in a blur, but this time the alien cruisers moved to intercept. Taking heavy damage but buying seconds the Valiant used to turn and fire again. Crippling the attacker, the third enemy ship pulled back slightly. Circling in the chamber, the artifact's light dimmed. As if conserving its strength, Ward looked at Korath. "It's testing us," Korath frowned. "For what?" Ward's eyes stayed locked on the map. "For whether we deserve to win." Outside, the third ship finally moved in for the kill. But instead of aiming at the Valiant or the alien fleet, it fired at the dying star itself. The blast sent a shockwave of burning gas and radiation sweeping toward every ship in range. Korath's voice was harsh. "That wave will destroy us all." Ward's tone was grim. "Not if we end this now." He keyed the cum to the sealed chamber. "Sergeant Vance, full release, now?" Vance hesitated only a second before slamming his palm on the activation console. The artifact roared to life, its glow flooding through the Valiant's walls. Energy surged through every human and alien weapon still operational, linking them together in one synchronized firing solution. Ward looked at Korath. "On my mark." The alien admiral bared his teeth. "Mark." Every ship fired at once, a storm of energy converging on the final enemy vessel. The blast ripped through its hull, tearing it apart before the shockwave reached them. The surviving fragments dissolved into light, vanishing as quickly as they came. The wave from the dying star passed harmlessly through the fleet. The artifact's glow faded, its hum settling into silence. Ward exhaled slowly. "Tides." Turned, Korath glanced at him, a reluctant respect in his gaze. "For now." The Admiral's secret, the smoke of battle still hung in the black of space. The shattered remains of the enemy ships drifted like glowing ash before fading into nothing. The HSS Valiant floated in the center of it all, its hull scorched. But intact, around it, the crippled Korathian fleet slowly regained power. Systems flickered to life, weapons rearmed, engines hummed weakly. On the command deck, Captain Ward stood beside Admiral Korath. The alien leader's posture was rigid, but his eyes told a different story. They were heavy with something deeper than relief. Ward noticed it instantly. "You've seen them before," he said quietly. Korath didn't answer at first, his gaze fixed on the holographic map that now showed no enemy signals. Finally, he spoke. "Not me. My people." Ward tilted his head. "Go on." Korath's voice was low, almost reluctant. "Long before your kind rose from your world, the Korathian Empire ruled far more than you see today." He paused, as if the words were bitter. "We had no rivals, no threats, only endless expansion." Ward's eyes narrowed, sensing the turn in the story. "And then?" Korath's claws tapped the table slowly. "We found them." Ward didn't interrupt. "They came from the dark between galaxies," Korath continued. "Not with armies, but with whispers." Ward's brow furrowed. "Whispers?" Korath nodded. "They didn't conquer through war. They erased through fear, planets surrendering before the first shot was fired." The alien admiral's gaze shifted toward the floor, as if staring down into the sealed chamber far below. "When?" "We finally fought them. We lost entire sectors in days," he said. "Then we found it." Ward's eyes sharpened. "The artifact." Korath met his gaze. "It was our salvation and our curse." Below deck, Sergeant Vance and Private Keller stood in silence as the artifact rested in its cradle. Its glow was dim now, but its presence was still heavy. They could feel it in the air, in their bones. Keller glanced at Vance. "What do you think it is?" Vance shook his head. "Not a weapon. Not in the way we think." Korath's voice on the command deck was quieter now, almost a confession. "The artifact was not made by us, nor by those we fought," he said. "It was left behind by something older, something that hated them. More than it hated anything else." Ward's expression stayed unreadable. "So you used it?" Korath nodded once. And we won. For a time, Ward leaned forward. What happened? Korath's eyes darkened. We became what it judged unworthy. The human captain felt a chill at the words. It turned on you. Korath gave a slow nod. It didn't destroy us. It left us, and it took its power with it. Ward exhaled slowly, piecing it together. So when you saw it here, in my ship, Korath finished the thought. I knew my empire's past had come back to judge again. Ward glanced toward the chamber in his mind. Maybe it's not here to judge, Admiral. Maybe it's here to decide if there's anyone left worth saving. Outside the viewports, the Korathian fleet moved into loose formation. Alien repair crews worked in the glow of nearby stars, welding, sealing, rearming, but every soldier, every officer kept glancing at the human vessel, not with hatred, but with something far more. Cautious, for the first time, the humans had been the deciding force in a battle that should have ended them instantly. Korath stepped closer to Ward, his voice dropping. There's something you don't know. When the artifact turns against its wielder, it doesn't just leave. Ward raised an eyebrow. Then what? Korath's eyes locked on him. It calls them. Ward's jaw tightened. Them. As in the ones we just fought? Korath nodded. Those were only scouts. The words sank in like ice. Ward turned to the holographic map, expanding its range. Beyond the faint static of the battle's aftermath, new signals began to flicker. Far away, but growing in number, Korath's tone was grim. They will come for it, human. And when they do, there will be no trap, no alliance, no clever maneuver to save you. Ward didn't look away from the map, his mind already turning. Maybe, he said quietly. But maybe that's why it's here, to finish what it started long ago. Korath stared at him, uncertain whether the human captain was brave or insane. Below, the artifact pulsed once, faint but deliberate. It was listening, and perhaps deciding. Ward straightened. Then we prepare together. Korath's voice was skeptical. You think my people will fight beside yours after centuries of war? Ward's reply was firm. I think your people want to live in the sealed chamber. The golden glow of the artifact flickered into a deep crimson for just a heartbeat. Neither the Marines nor the officers on the command deck saw it, but somewhere, far beyond the edges of the map, in the silent dark between galaxies, something stirred in answer. Asterisk. The third player, the darkness beyond the edge of the map, began to move. At first, it was only faint flickers on the sensors, like static dancing across the void. Then, one by one, the signals sharpened into clear shapes, hundreds of them. Captain Ward stood motionless on the command deck, his eyes locked on the growing swarm. Admiral Korath stepped closer to the display, his voice low and heavy. They've come. The Korathian officers on the alien flagship began speaking over each other. Some shouted to ready weapons. Others argued they should flee while there was still time. Korath silenced them with a single gesture. Though his claws flexed against the table, Ward glanced sideways at him. You weren't exaggerating. This is a hunting pack. Korath's reply was grim. No, Captain. This is a culling. Below deck, Sergeant Vance and Private Keller stood guard over the artifact. Its golden light was gone, replaced with a deep, burning crimson. Keller's voice shook. It's angry. Vance kept his weapon ready, though he knew it would be useless. It's not angry at us. It's angry at them. The artifact pulsed once, sending a ripple through the floor that both Marines could feel in their chests. On the command deck, the Valiant's comms officer turned toward Ward. Sir, incoming transmission. Ward frowned. From who? She swallowed hard. Not them. The artifact. Every eye turned to the glowing comms display as alien and human characters scrolled across it. It wasn't a request. It was an order. Ward read the message out loud. Fight together, or all will fall. Korath's eyes narrowed. It's giving us no choice. Ward shook his head. No, Admiral. It's giving us one last chance. Outside, the swarm began to slow, their sleek, black ships moving in precise, coordinated arcs. They didn't fire. Not yet. Instead, they circled the combined human and Carathian fleet like predators studying prey. The silence of space pressed against every hull. Even the most battle-hardened veterans on both sides felt the weight of it. Ward leaned toward Korath. You know their tactics. Korath's voice was sharp. Yes, they divide and devour. Ward's eyes narrowed. Then we don't give them the chance. He turned to his crew. Link our targeting systems with the Carathian fleet. All ships. One firing pattern. There was hesitation, but the artifact pulsed, sending a burst of energy that linked every vessel instantly. On the alien flagship, Korath's second-in-command looked at his admiral in disbelief. Sir, our systems are merging with the human ship. Korath didn't answer immediately, then finally said, Let it happen. He knew the artifact had taken control, and fighting it now would be suicide. The first enemy ships moved, accelerating so quickly they blurred. In a heartbeat, 3 of them were inside the fleet's perimeter. Human and alien gunners tracked them together. Firing in perfect synchronization, one ship dodged effortlessly. Another took a glancing hit, but the third was torn apart in a flash of white light. Ward's voice was steady. That's one. Keep the net tight. But for every enemy ship destroyed, more arrived. The swarm was endless, their movements impossibly fluid. Korath's jaw tightened. We can't hold this forever. Ward nodded. We don't have to. We just have to survive until it's ready. Below, in the sealed chamber, the artifact's crimson light deepened. Strange lines and symbols crawled across its surface. Shifting like living script, Vance felt a sharp pressure in his head, as if something was speaking directly into his mind. One strike, the voice said. One end. He looked at Keller. It's charging for something big. On the command deck. Harris called out, Sir, energy buildup is spiking. It's coming from the artifact. Ward's tone was clipped. How long until release? 2 minutes, maybe less, she replied. Korath turned sharply. If it's what I think it is, we'll need every ship to focus on a single target. Ward pointed at the center of the swarm, where a massive vessel, larger than any they'd seen yet, was holding position. That one, he said. The Alpha. The enemy ships sensed the shift. The swarm broke formation, throwing themselves at the fleet in a desperate attempt to stop the charge. Human and Carathian ships formed a living wall, sacrificing their hulls to block the attackers. On the Valiant, alarms blared as smaller enemy craft slammed into its shields. Ward gritted his teeth. Hold the line. The artifact's hum grew into a deep, vibrating roar. Vance braced himself as the light inside the chamber flared so bright it burned through his eyelids. Above, Ward's voice cut through the chaos. All ships on my mark. The swarm closed in, claws of black metal reaching for the human vessel. Mark, Ward said. The artifact's pulse tore through space. Every linked ship fired at once, their combined energy forming a single, blinding spear of light. It struck the massive enemy vessel in the center, piercing straight through. The shockwave ripped across the swarm, tearing their ships apart in a chain of explosions. When the light faded, the enemy was gone, only drifting. Fragments and the fading glow of the artifact remained. Ward's voice was quiet but certain. That's the third player dealt with. Korath gave him a long look. For now, the impossible victory silence returned to space. The great black ocean between the stars was calm again, but it was not the same calm as before. It was the silence after a storm, heavy with the memory of destruction. The wreckage of enemy ships drifted slowly, glowing faintly before vanishing into dust. The combined human and Carathian fleets floated together, battered but alive, on the command deck of the HSS Valiant. Captain Ward looked at the holographic map. For the first time in hours, there were no red enemy markers. Lieutenant Harris exhaled in relief. It's over. Ward's eyes stayed on the screen. No, Lieutenant. It's survived, but it's not over. His gaze shifted toward Admiral Korath, who stood silent, his expression unreadable. Korath's claws rested on the table, his eyes fixed on the human captain. You fought well, he said finally. Ward gave a small nod. We both did. For a moment, there was no hostility between them, only the shared understanding of survivors. But the weight of centuries of war still lay heavy between their people. Below deck, Sergeant Vance and Private Keller stood before the artifact. Its glow had returned to gold, calm and steady. The furious crimson light was gone, replaced by a warm pulse that felt almost approving. Keller broke the silence. Do you think it knows we won? Vance looked at the artifact and nodded slowly. It knows. The comm channel opened, Ward's voice reaching the chamber. Sergeant, secure it. We don't know if it's done with us yet. Vance acknowledged the order, sealing the chamber and resetting the guards at the door. As the heavy lock slid into place, the artifact gave one last faint pulse. It felt like a final word, though neither Marine could understand it. On the alien flagship, Korath's second-in-command reported damage reports and casualty numbers. They were staggering, but the fleet had survived. Korath listened, then closed the channel, his eyes returning to Ward. My people will not like this, he said. They will not forget they stood beside humans in battle. Ward's tone was steady. They'll remember they lived because of it. The two leaders stood in silence for a moment. Then Korath leaned slightly forward. The artifact will be a point of conflict. You know that. Ward's expression didn't change, which is why it will remain hidden. Korath's eyes narrowed. Hidden or destroyed? Ward's voice was quiet but firm. Hidden. Some things should not be erased, only kept until they're needed again. Outside, the fleets began to separate. Korathian ships slowly turned toward their territory. Their engines glowing faintly, the Valiant stayed still, watching them go. Korath's flagship lingered a moment longer before its thrusters lit and carried it away. For the first time in history, a Korathian fleet left human space without firing a single shot. On the Valiant's bridge, Harris looked at her captain. Do you trust him? Ward gave a small shrug. I trust that he wants to survive. That's enough for now. She hesitated. And if they come for the artifact? Ward's eyes drifted to the sealed deck below. Then they'll learn the same lesson the others did. Days later, the Valiant docked at a hidden human station far from major colonies. The artifact was offloaded under heavy guard, its chamber transferred into a deep vault built inside the station's core. No one outside the highest command would know it was there. Ward signed the final security order, then turned away without looking back. That night, standing alone in his quarters, Ward replayed the battle in his mind, the moment the fleets had fought together, the moment the artifact had chosen to act, and the moment he'd seen crimson light in its core. A warning that it was far from done. He didn't believe in omens, but he knew enough to recognize a promise when he saw one, far away, beyond the edges of known space. In the dark between galaxies, the Swarm rebuilt, pieces of their ships reformed, gathering into new shapes. They had felt the artifact's pulse, and they would come again. But next time, the humans would not be alone. Next time, the galaxy itself might stand with them, or against them. Ward looked out his window at the distant stars. His voice was barely a whisper. The impossible happened once, and it will happen again. The hum of the station filled the quiet, and somewhere deep below, locked in the vault, the artifact pulsed once. Faint but certain. It was waiting, asterisk,